Hey, hi. In life, what are the factors that contribute to a person's well being and the pursuit of a good life? Thinkers have put forth diverse theories attempting to identify those intrinsic elements that enhance our overall welfare. It is widely agreed that pleasurable experiences play a significant role in enhancing the quality of our life. However, a pertinent question arises: do all forms of pleasure hold equal sway in influencing our well being, or do some varieties of pleasure exert a more profound impact than others? The eminent 19th century philosopher John Stuart Mill unequivocally asserts that certain types of pleasure indeed wield a greater influence on our well being. In our discussion today, we shall delve into the rationale behind Mill's stance and elucidate his perspective on this intriguing facet of human existence. John Stuart Mill's perspective on well-being can be succinctly encapsulated in his hedonistic philosophy. To Mill is not merely one among many factors that contribute to our well-being. Rather, it stands as the sole determinant. In his view, pleasure is the cornerstone of human well-being, while pain is the sole factor that diminishes it. Essentially, for Mill, a person's life flourishes in direct proportion to their happiness. Now, when Mill refers to happiness, he does so in a very specific sense, as synonymous with pleasure and the absence of pain. That's it. In his work, Utilitarianism, he characterized the optimal life as one that is as free as possible from pain and as abundant as possible in enjoyment. This conception of well-being is what we term hedonism. He says, since pleasure is the sole object of our desires for its intrinsic value, we can confidently affirm its unique and inherent worth. Now, let's look at Jeremy Bentham, an earlier advocate of utilitarianism who also firmly rooted himself in hedonism. Utilitarianism is this moral theory that simplifies things. An action is right if it maximizes the total happiness in the world in the long haul, and if not, well, it is wrong. Hence, the consequences of your actions are the real deal. But here is where Bentham parts ways with Mill, and it's a significant detour. For Bentham, the value of a pleasurable experience boils down to two things: how intense the pleasure is and how long it sticks around. In his world, the intensity and duration are the kingpins determining the worth of pleasure. The source of that pleasure doesn't matter one bit to Bentham. He draws this comparison that might sound a bit bizarre at first glance. He puts reading poetry side by side with playing the mindless game called pushpin. And in Bentham's book, if the quantity of pleasure is the same, well, pushpin is just as good as poetry. Now, let's explore what we can call qualitative hedonism. It's a fancy term for the idea that not all pleasures are created equal. While Bentham might argue that pleasure is this one-size-fits-all feeling present in all pleasurable experiences, Mill takes a different stand. For Mill, pleasure comes in various flavors. You see, you might enjoy both reading poetry and going for a run, but the pleasures they bring can have entirely different feels to them. It's like comparing apples and oranges. They are both fruits, but they offer distinct tastes. So Mill suggests that some kinds of pleasure are more desirable and valuable than others. In Mill's book, certain qualitatively superior pleasures have the power to add more to our happiness than an equal or even greater quantity of others. So when it comes to measuring the value of a pleasurable experience, Mill factors in three things: intensity, duration, and, unlike Bentham, quality. In examining the quality of pleasure, John Stuart Mill introduces what he calls the competent judge's test. This test aims to determine which pleasure is of higher quality by consulting individuals who have experienced both. According to Mill, only those who have first-hand knowledge of both pleasures can make a valid comparison. If a clear majority of such individuals express a stronger preference for one pleasure over the other, then that pleasure is considered of higher quality. However, Mill acknowledges that even those who recognize the intrinsic superiority of higher quality pleasures may sometimes succumb to the allure of lower quality pleasures. He cautions that indulging in lower quality pleasures too frequently might lead individuals to lose their capacity to appreciate higher quality ones, as the ability to experience nobler feelings is fragile and easily extinguished. This concept aligns with Mill's earlier proof of the principle of utility, where he argues that the sole evidence of a pleasure's desirability lies in the fact that people genuinely desire it more strongly. Mill contends that the results of this test are evident. While most people have experienced bodily pleasures that are common to animals, only a select few have cultivated their mental faculties enough to enjoy distinctly human pleasures such as those of the intellect, emotions, imagination, and moral sentiments. Those who fall into this category, according to Mill, unequivocally prefer these higher faculties. It's important to note that Mill requires individuals to have genuinely enjoyed a specific pleasure, not just participated in an activity that might potentially lead to it. For instance, someone who hasn't developed an appreciation for classical music cannot be considered a competent judge of the aesthetic pleasure derived from it, even if they have attended a symphony performance, or many of them. So this perspective allows Mill to address the criticism that hedonists would endorse a life worthy only of swine, as long as it brings satisfaction. Mill's qualitative hedonism asserts that while such a life possesses for some value due to lower quality pleasures, a person would lead a significantly happier and more fulfilling life if it were enriched with higher quality pleasures. Mill also suggests that even earlier utilitarians like Jeremy Bentham could adequately respond to his criticism without introducing the concept of qualitative distinctions between pleasures. They could argue that intellectual and aesthetic pleasures offer more extended and less painful enjoyment than bodily ones, such as the absence of hangovers, right? However, by incorporating the notion of qualitative distinctions, Mill strengthens his response. One practical implication of Mill's view is the importance of providing education that equips individuals to appreciate higher quality pleasures. Those lacking this preparation may not comprehend why these pleasures are superior, making them incompetent judges. In a sense, Mill's hedonistic conception of happiness, rooted in the employment of distinctly human faculties, shares some resemblance with non-hedonistic perspective of the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Even though Mill rarely acknowledges Aristotle as an influence, this alignment with Aristotle's philosophy is one of several echoes of Aristotle found in Mill's philosophy. Mill's philosophy raises some significant questions that remain unanswered. Two such questions pertain to whether there are qualitative distinctions among pains and the extent to which higher quality pleasure outweighs bodily pleasure in terms of value. So, several points of contention surround Mill's viewpoint. For example, number one, whether Mill believes that this applies every time one pleasure is of higher quality than another, or only in cases where the qualitative difference is exceptionally pronounced. Two, whether resigning the higher quality pleasure implies losing the ability to enjoy it entirely, or merely giving up a small portion of it, such as a 5-minute experience. Three, the precise meaning of Mill's phrase of a small account in the context of comparing the two types of pleasure. These questions underscore the complexity and nuances of Mill's philosophy, leaving room for ongoing debate and interpretation among scholars and students like us alike. In conclusion, John Stuart Mill's Qualitative Hedonism raises some intriguing questions about the nature of pleasure and its hierarchy. At first glance, it may appear that Mill undervalues bodily pleasures, suggesting that we should prioritize more refined activities like museum visits and opera over exciting pursuits such as sports or sex. However, Mill's perspective takes into account the multifaceted nature of pleasure. Individuals with cultivated faculties can find a higher quality pleasure in a wide range of activities, some combining them with other forms of pleasure. For example, someone well versed in football can derive intellectual and aesthetic pleasure from the sport, alongside the visceral excitement of the game's physical aspects. Similarly, Mill acknowledges that sex can offer both emotional fulfillment and physical pleasure. So, Mill's philosophy suggests that the best lives are those that strike a balance between tranquility and excitement, recognizing the value of both higher and lower quality pleasures. While he may argue against choosing lower quality pleasure at the expense of higher quality ones, he doesn't imply complete abstinence from the latter. Many everyday activities like exercise, running encompass elements of lower quality pleasure. Often these lower quality pleasures can coexist with higher quality intellectual and emotional experiences, creating a more valuable combination than either of them in isolation. Additionally, there are moments when resting our higher faculties can lead to a recharge that allows us to enjoy more higher quality pleasure in the long run. It is possible that some may still contend that a life involving a bit more bodily pleasure than Mill suggests could be the ideal. However, if Mill has persuaded you that pleasures arising from the exercise of distinctly human faculties significantly surpass bodily pleasures, then he might consider his argument successful, even if some disagreement remains regarding the extent of this predominance. So, my friends, that was a reminder from Mills that life's true richness lies not just in the quantity but in the quality of our pleasures. So, my dear friends, I invite you to explore the depths of your own experiences and preferences. That is the only way you can find the harmonious balance that leads to a life truly well lived according to the person, the identity that you are. It is different for everyone, but there is a very high common denominator in highly evolved society. With that thought, my dear friends, goodbye for now and see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.